Hey everyone, I'm Jesse.
Stacey.
And this is part 3 of our story of kind of how we built Bannor Toys and how we got here. We left off with the Des Moines shop.
Yeah.
And the CNC machine and Eli being born. And also kind of that's where we had just started to kind of learn about inventory and kind of how to offer our toys and things like that. The house we were living in was still that 2-bedroom bungalow, and we just had Eli and
we were out of space.
So we had a 2-bedroom house and 3 kids and us. And the business was growing, and we wanted to, instead of rent shop space, we kind of thought it would be good to build some equity in the space. So we thought we would look for an affordable acreage where we could put the shop back together and live on site, work on site again. That's how we ended up in Madrid, this small town. The acreage we bought was just outside of town. We weren't like set on a certain area. We were just set on a certain property. So we were looking south of where we lived, we were looking east of where we lived. We ended up settling north of where we lived, which is where we ended up. It was a pain moving all that big equipment. We were like renting forklifts and we bought a big trailer and yeah, that was something. But it was a great property for what it was, like for what we needed at the time. It had the Morton building for the shop. It had the studio.
So it had a big, it was a 4-car garage, and then at the end of the garage there was a shop space. So it was unfinished and it was small. I mean, it was the size of probably a bedroom. Yeah,
like a large shed.
Large shed. So we moved all our inventory into there, and by this point in our business, we had narrowed down our inventory. We used to offer every toy in every wood, and we just couldn't keep a handle on it sometimes as we grew. So we moved all this inventory into the shop and our laser, and we had a big table, and there was just a little bit of space to walk around that table by the time we got everything in there. We were able to move from the Des Moines shop to Madrid and only close down for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, it took me a little while to get the like wood shop up and running, but we had the inventory to at least like start selling some stuff again. We had an assistant in Des Moines that helped her ship stuff, so this was too far away for that person to travel, so she ended up hiring again, and it was in this little add-on. We didn't have an actual studio space yet, so
you had to go into our house to use the bathroom. It was
that person was Marty, by the way, who's still with us.
Who's still with us almost 4 years later.
Yeah, so we hired her. She came and worked in this little dark tool room where the walls were made of like OSB wood, and so was the ceiling, and there was like 2 little lights, and she stuck around, so she's still here.
She stuck around.
And the wood shop, the Morton building, it was exactly what you would think. It was metal walls. There was no insulation. There was 3 light bulbs for the whole building. It was made to store your camper in. So it did have a cement floor, so concrete was good. But we had to do a lot of work there. We had to build a wall to section off the part that was going to be the wood shop. We had to insulate. We had to spray foam. We had to run
lights.
Oh, we had to run electric. That took forever. We had to work with the electric company to get a whole separate service out there. And remember, we're on an acreage. We're not in town, so they had to bring it for half a mile.
And this is all stuff we're figuring out along the way.
We've never done any of this. Yeah.
We have no idea how to do this.
But we did end up getting it all set up, and it worked pretty well for what we needed for a while.
For a short while.
For
your studio. Last near as long as we had hoped. We moved out here thinking that we had all this space, and shortly after we moved out there, we realized the studio part was nowhere near big enough. I mean, Marty and I were walking on each other. There was no room for anything. So I convinced him to knock out the garage wall and expand the studio.
My 4-car garage became a 2-car garage real quick.
That his truck didn't even fit in, so.
Became a really beautiful studio, pretty big too.
It was my favorite.
It was really pretty too.
It was gorgeous, and we had all our shelves for inventory. We had a place for photos. We had the lasers, the assembly.
Built countertops the exact height they wanted them for the lasers. We drywalled everything. We insulated everything. We painted the concrete floors. We did assembly tables.
But it was perfect. Oh, I cried when we moved out of there. It was my favorite.
That section of our business, this part 3 of kind of moving into our own space and growing that way and learning about the inventory and learning how to ship and kind of learning how to do it small town and rurally was kind of short-lived, honestly. And that's not even a negative. We kind of hit a growth spurt right about there. So what we thought was a large building and a large studio only lasted us, what, 2.5 years?
A year and a half.
Okay, so.
A year and a half.
And we were like,
had to go.
Yeah, we were running out of space in a hurry. Like the inventory wasn't enough.
We hired more people too.
Yeah.
To our house. To work at our house.
Yeah, we had that shipping studio, but there was sometimes 3, sometimes 4 people in there.
And then you had a couple guys out in the wood shop.
Yeah, and everyone was coming inside the house to use the bathroom still, which nobody complained, but we were like, gosh, this isn't super professional, is it?
This is not. And there was no plumbing. There's no way to add plumbing.
Yeah, we couldn't get anything, again, being rural, so it was hard to get things. But it was a fun time, and it was a time of crazy growth. Like, that's when people started finding us online. That's when we started building this community. Yeah. That's when we learned about kind of working with graphic designers and collaborators and influencers and working with people that weren't on site. So
we outsourced a lot of our employees, and
and
they're still with us today. A lot of them.
Like our graphic designer works with us, and accounting people, like bookkeeping people that we don't know anything about, like the things that are hard for us to do. Like, we learned a ton about business in that time frame.
We did.
It's a short window because we kind of outgrew that space really fast. So part of that's sad because we just loved being out there, out of town, kind of. And again, we live in a small town now, so it's still, we never left that town, by the way. We lived right outside of town. We loved the acreage, but we didn't need the studio space and that Morton building, that shop space and stuff once we had it here.
Building,
So awesome little hobby farm, awesome place to be. But
your chickens are still there.
Yep, the chickens stayed with the new owners of the house, which we became friends with actually. So we're friends with people that own our old house. So that was a fun chapter. It was a short.
It was much shorter than we thought it would be.
A short chapter. Yeah. It was. But anyway, so that was kind of how we learned about moving giant equipment. It was how we learned to take the leap as far as like buying a property for commercial and stuff, as opposed to just renting warehouse space. This is where we learned a ton about inventory, learned a ton about hiring employees, where we learned a ton about like fast growth, kind of.
We really did.
Managing orders as they come in. And people are watching this going like, you run out of limited toys in 3 days. Where did you learn about fast growth? Like, we didn't learn about fast growth. We're going through a little bit of that now again. But again, we'll catch up with that stuff. Yes. All right, guys, next week we're going to talk about the huge move into town, and that might even be a 2-parter because the renovation of this building, guys, took me months. We'll talk about it next week, and then we'll talk again about probably moving in and just operations here and how we manage, working in all this and being in town. So join us then. It was really fun. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.